Rachel, many English language learners aspire to fluency, and a core part of that often involves the idea of thinking in English. It sounds simple, but what does it really mean, and why is it such a critical goal for advanced learners?
It's a fantastic question, Jake, because it moves beyond just speaking English. Thinking in English means you're no longer translating from your native language. Instead, your brain processes thoughts, forms ideas, and even experiences emotions directly in English. This is critical because it dramatically increases your processing speed, reduces hesitation, and makes your communication sound far more natural and less labored.
I can see the benefit in speed and naturalness, but for someone still grappling with grammar or expanding their vocabulary, how do you even begin to make that shift? It feels like an advanced skill that might be out of reach for many learners.
It certainly feels like a monumental task, but you start small. The first step is to cultivate an internal monologue in English. Begin by describing very simple, familiar things around you. For instance, when you see a book, instead of thinking of its name in your native language and then translating, simply identify it as book in English. Label everyday objects, actions, and even your immediate surroundings internally.
So just narrating your environment or your actions, I'm walking to the kitchen. That's a red apple. Does this happen out loud or is it purely internal?
Primarily internal, especially at first. You don't want to draw too much attention to yourself, but occasionally speaking phrases out loud can reinforce the mental connection. Another key technique is to engage in self-talk about your daily tasks. As you're making coffee, think, I'm pouring water, now I'm adding coffee grounds. This creates a direct link between the action and the English vocabulary without the native language intermediary.
That makes sense. It's about building those direct pathways. But what about more complex thoughts or situations where I need to express an opinion or debate something? That seems like a much harder leap.
That's where you expand. Once you're comfortable with basic narration, try to describe your feelings or simple plans in English. If you're planning your evening, think, I need to cook dinner. Then I'll read a book. For more complex ideas, try to imagine conversations you might have or even role-play scenarios in your head. Picture yourself discussing a topic with someone and formulate your arguments and responses in English. This is essentially mental practice for real-world interaction.
So active imagination becomes a tool here. What if I encounter a word I don't know or a concept I can't quite articulate in English during this internal practice? Does that hinder the process?
Not at all. In fact, it highlights gaps in your vocabulary or phrasing, which is valuable. When you hit a wall, make a mental note, or even a physical one if you can. Look up the word or phrase later. The goal isn't perfection. It's consistent effort to stay in the English thought process. Over time, those gaps will naturally shrink. You're training your brain to seek English solutions first.
That brings me to the idea of immersion. Many suggest surrounding yourself with English. How does that factor into training your mind to think in English?
Immersion is incredibly powerful. The more you expose yourself to English through books, podcasts, movies, and even by changing the language settings on your devices, the more raw material your brain has to work with. It provides context, vocabulary, and natural phrasing. When you're constantly hearing and reading English, it naturally starts to infiltrate your internal thought processes. It creates an environment where thinking in English becomes the default rather than an active choice.
It sounds like a continuous process, a habit you need to build and maintain. What's the biggest challenge people face when trying to adopt this habit?
The biggest challenge is consistency and patience. It won't happen overnight. There will be moments you revert to your native language or moments you feel frustrated by your limitations. The key is not to give up. Every moment you spend trying to think in English, even imperfectly, reinforces those neural pathways. Treat it like a mental workout. Regular, even short sessions are more effective than infrequent, intense ones. Celebrate the small victories, like successfully thinking through a simple task entirely in English.
So, it's about conscious effort gradually becoming an unconscious habit. Start small, describe your world, imagine conversations, immerse yourself, and don't get discouraged by the bumps along the way. Ultimately, it's about making English the default language of your internal world to unlock true fluency.
Precisely. It's a journey, not a destination, but the rewards for your fluency are immense.
If you found this conversation helpful, please share this episode with someone who might benefit from it.